Oh, well, hello, darlings. It's been a minute, hasn't it, since we've been in the egg. How have you been? I have missed this room for our little rendezvous. I hope you have something delicious to drink. Oh, I may have made a miscalculation about what I have, but that won't stop us. As usual, here we are to celebrate a Monday evening. Crawl into bed with me. Yeah. Yeah. Ha! Perfect every single time. Hello, dear ones. I hope you're wearing your nightcaps. I certainly am. I've got something comfortable on. I've missed you. It's been a whole week. And like I said, we're back in the egg. I was in Baltimore the last time you saw me. And before that, I was in the living room. Even more exciting. So I hope you're all well. I'm on my own this evening, so I'm just going to boop, say hello to all of you. Just drop that at the bottom. Hello, Bill. Hello, Johnny. I did not graduate today, but I just liked the shape of this hat. Hello, Rob Rolling. I just really like the shape of this hat, and it's actually an antique. So the tassel's actually made out of real metal, which I love. And I have these new earrings in as well. I've got my little snakies. So if you want me to get a little closer, little snakies. So I've been away. I have been in Baltimore and Philly and New York City, Brooklyn specifically, mostly. And I got these little snakies from the American Visionary Art Museum. And so I just couldn't say no. Something weird. Hello, Sally. We started a little bit early. Usually I start a bit late, but I decided to start early today. Get yourself something delicious. We're going to continue with space opera. I have decreed it. Unless, I don't know if I have a copy of Station 11. No, I think my copy of Station 11 is elsewhere. Although I do have a copy of Rail Sea, which is an excellent, excellent book. I did have fun travels, and there are presents for patrons coming from travels, which is very exciting. Although the weather, pardon the bare leg, but the weather has shifted, darlings. And so I am quite stuffy inside of the egg. It's been very hard to sleep. So I'm burning some incense. It's frankincense. I'm setting a mood. I've lit a candle in honor of Hermes and Hecate for language and for communication. I am still on an adventure to relocate to either Baltimore or Philly, so that's in the works. Still looking for some projects to sink my teeth into, and also a place to call the new egg. Although I will be loath to leave these stripes, I'll just have to paint new ones. I have to say, when you move into an apartment, they say you can't paint. You can paint. You just have to be prepared to kiss your security deposit goodbye. And frankly, if I get to live in a beautiful, crazily painted place for a few years, I'd happily kiss that deposit goodbye. So, here we are. Lots of people have family in the places I went in Baltimore and Brooklyn. I had a wonderful time. I was in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. and spent some time in Tribeca as well, in Manhattan, visiting a friend. So if you're in New York City, I highly recommend a wine bar called Terroir, which is down in Tribeca. It is excellent, and they are having a thing about Riesling this summer. If you're into Riesling, great. Like I am, Riesling is a very weird kind of a wine. I like it. And Brooklyn is a vast place. It's a vast, vast place. And I was in a very insulated section of it called Bay Ridge, where everyone was just very kind and very welcoming, and the bagels were amazing. No surprise there. But I couldn't walk down the street for having somebody compliment the orange hat I was wearing, or the outfit that my friend was wearing, or anything. People just seemed very, no nonsense, but kind. So, German wine. Hello, Madame Ansa. Is Riesling German specifically? I'm into it. I know a lot of good Riesling comes from Germany, but it's weird. I like that it's confusing. I like a confusing beverage. It makes me slow down and really consider it. All right, darlings, before we get started, can you hear me all right? Do I sound mellifluous to you, or do I sound like I'm far away and tinny? Does it sound cheap? Or does it sound expensive? Let me know in the comments. This is also a time to tell you, darlings, that I will soon be taking a break from our Monday nights. That's right. The month of June, I will be off the calendar for the channel. And I'll be dropping in here and there to give you some sneak peeks, some behind the scenes about things that I'm doing. But I have to work on moving, and I have to work on my podcast, the season 3 revelation of the Glamour Hobo Field Notes, which I'm going to throw up right here. Not throw up, not like vomit, but but vomit, like in an art way. So I have to say, you can find me on Spotify, you can find me on Podbean, you can find me on Apple Podcasts, you can find me on iHeartRadio, I think, and Pandora, and all of the places. If you stream, I'm there. And you've got 2 seasons that you can binge. That's me. Right there. All right, dear ones. I will continue to be the Metatron for the June game of Nat 21 Adventures. So tomorrow is the season finale of the 7th season of the game. I will be your Metatron. I will be there, covered in my eyes, and then there'll be a week of Ask Me Anything with the cast. And then you can find us at the New Jersey Renaissance Fair. I will be there as the Metatron, probably on a pair of stilts, probably covered in eyes. And also as my NPC that I dropped in 2 months ago, probably at this point now, Nispira Falk, the tiefling bard. So I could never sound cheap. That's so nice of you to say. All right. I think it's time. I don't have anything else to say other than the teacup of my heart is very, very full because I've been visiting with my friends and pushing my life forward a bit and just really shaking off COVID as much as I can. Thankfully, I have never caught it, and I am vaccinated, so I don't have to shake it off of my mortal coil, but it absolutely affects my mortal coil being a performer in this time and not able to really do what I am best at, which is be in a group of people live, sharing breath and sharing songs and sharing stories. So this has been a lovely interlude, and we will continue to be here. So it is a pleasure and a privilege to be here, even if the space weather, as Madame Monza says, has been just really a lot lately. And so, on that vein, it's time for some space opera. Space weather, space opera, taking up space, all of the things. And I'm using a new computer. I used my government cheese to buy myself a new piece of machinery that will allow me to do my job better. Very excited. It's right in front of me. It's what I'm reading all of you on. All right. Wednesday is a full moon and an eclipse, so in Sagittarius. It's a lot. There's a lot going on. Where were we? Do you remember? Well, do you? Oh, I think we're about to meet everyone. Oh my god, I'm going to have to do all the voices, aren't I? It's going to be very challenging because they're all aliens. And some of them are math that don't even have voices. Air, that's right. I found it. All right. All right, darlings, settle in. Get yourself a digestif. It's Aperol Spritz season, but I am not drinking an Aperol Spritz. I think at the New Jersey Fair, oh my god, this is awful. Could someone please bring me something different to drink? This is so bad. I'm gonna put this aside. I thought it's medicinal, that's for sure. It's raspberry leaf tea with some saffron. It's supposed to be good for your guts, but Jesus Christ, it tastes so bad. What a way to start the show. All right, everyone. We are in the section of the book called Air in Space Opera by Catherynne Valente. Last week, we learned about the Grand Prix. We learned about empathy and that everything is rhythm. And a spaceship was built out of a T-bone steak and a glass of milk, which was exciting. Air. Go sing it like a hummingbird, the greatest anthem ever heard. That's from Heroes by Mans Zemelo. Actual song from the Eurovision Song Contest here on planet Earth. Chapter 14. Vampires are alive. Mira and Urt were wrong, by the way, on the night they met Decibel Jones and discussed the nature of extraterrestrial culture and determined the course of their entire lives via scoops of pistachio, coconut, and mango gelato. Oh, I could eat those flavors right now. Wrap it up. Send it over. There are shy, nerdy predator scientists. The things of Thing World will, very occasionally, venture beyond the opportunities afforded to them by 24/7 slaughter parties and exploding blood. Scorpions do go to the moon. Take, for example, the Yurtmak of planet Yint, a deranged gutterball of gas jungles and carnivorous rivers, hurtling through the beer bottle-strewn lanes of the gravitational bowling alley that is septuple star system New Scorpii. Improbably, the body of an adult yurtmac is basically the same as a human's, if slightly a snailier color, and capable of producing a pernicious pheromone from its nipples that has an effect on the IQ of any foreign visitor, similar to the effect of a folding chair on a professional wrestler. Unfortunately for all of us, they also have heads. The head of a yurtmac can best be described as what you would get if a hippo mated with a chainsaw and produced something you wouldn't let into public school, even with a hat on, who then went on to have an unhappy affair with a spiny pufferfish, whereupon, at the height of a particularly pustulant turgid puberty, the resulting grandchild's face exploded. How's that for a face for radio? The yurtmac are obligate carnivores for whom murder occupies the same cultural space as football does for humans in a World Cup year, complete with merchandising, celebrity players followed by hordes of fans, and families gathering on a Sunday to bond over the spectacle, maybe hitting the backyard to show off a few trick shots for the kids. Yet the famed philosopher and beloved children's author Gogunar Gorkanin was yurtmac. Even as a juvenile, her carnage was workmanlike and derivative at best, leaving her outcast, underemployed, and unpopular with men of her peer group, despite the best efforts of modern yint-wide dating services. Gogunar took this reasonably well for a yurtmac. Carefully avoiding major organs, she fondly stabbed her mother and father goodbye and vanished into the wilderness. Eventually, she settled down, built herself a traditional heart valve hut in the depths of the fluoro-chloro forest of Yelir, and buckled down to invent a way, any way, to get off that rock fully of socially challenged chainsaw-faced hooligans. That is what Mira and Urt forgot, having been, if not popular, always cool. No matter how mad, bad, and dangerous to know a civilization gets, unto every generation are born the lonely and the uncool, destined to forever stare into the candy store window of their culture, and loneliness is the mother of ascension. Only the uncool have the requisite alone time to advance their species. And so it was that eventually, between drawing meat ship schematics in the dirt and dreaming of a world where she didn't hate literally everyone, the shyest and most sensitive of yurtmacs began to plan the most ambitious massacre in the history of the galaxy. A murder of stupidity. The fateful weapon? A large print, mildly venomous picture book for which the general galactic population feels a level of affection and tender attachment that falls somewhere between Newton's Principia Mathematica and Goodnight Moon. Gogunar Gorkanin's Unkillable Facts contains 99.9% pure, reliable, and comprehensive laws of the universe as observed by an underachieving, socially anxious mutant murder hippo, and is considered to be an essential to a healthy, balanced childhood as hugs, nightlights, and cellular division. It is nearly impossible to forget one of Gogunar Gorkanin's unkillable facts. The gently envenomated pages produce flashes of temporary but breathtakingly colorful pain as you turn them, so that the simple, heartfelt prose is charred into the reader's sense memory with incredible efficacy. This is Gogunar's second general unkillable fact. For everything that exists, somewhere in the universe, there is a creature that eats it, breathes it, fucks it, wears it, secretes, perspires, exhales, or excretes it. If you want to argue with me on this one, consider the brick-breathing beast of Valente and shut your cake-hole. You have already heard the first general fact. Life is beautiful and life is stupid. It goes on to add, you can only ever fix one of these at a time, and wouldn't it be nice if anyone could agree on which one is the bigger problem? Given her sales numbers, Gogunar Gorkanen, Assassin of Ignorance, is, to this day, idolized among the Yurtmak throughout the 7 slaloming stars of the new Scorpii system as the greatest serial killer ever to play the game. Perhaps if humans had been able to read Gogunar's Gorkanons and the first general as a bedtime story like everyone else, they wouldn't have had such a terribly tough time figuring out the whole trick with interstellar starships. Chapter 15. This ship is leaving tonight. I have to adjust my pillows. I'm so far away. Ugh. All right, I'm here. Ah, shit. Occupational hazard. All right, here we go. Actually, I'm going to throw up a thing. I forgot to mention, I am still accepting your gifts, your writings, and your postcards at my mailbag address, which is down there. If you want to send me something lovely to wear to sleep, if you want to send me some weird books that you found at the thrift store with sci-fi in them, if you want to send me some slash fiction that you yourself wrote, please send it, because I love to receive things in the mail. I love to read, and I love to laugh, and I love to fall in love, and so I may even read it on air if you send me something. So there. That is the address. Hi, new people. All right. Chapter 15. The ship is leaving tonight. Every civilization comes to the creation of an iconic ship design in their own way and in their own time, just as methodically and tenderly as a planet comes to the configuration of its favorite species. It simply cannot be rushed, and once arrived at, is rarely abandoned. Ask any kid to draw a house, and though there may be variations in chimney placement or door shape, it will be recognizable to anyone with as many limbs and lobes as that child as a house. A ship, lovingly crafted by gravity, raw materials, anatomical pluses and minuses, architectural traditions, and functional to fabulous score of its species at the time of mass driver invention, is no less cozy and relaxing than the drawings of a house made by the innocent hands of untraumatized juveniles. It is, therefore, entirely impossible to mistake one world's fleet for another. No matter how tactically advantageous such camouflage might be, it's just not comfy, so why make things more unpleasant for everyone? One would never confuse the soft, stacked bubbles of the Alunazar Tough Chipped for the single hollowed-out moon gem of an Utarak octahedro sloop, or the living wicker ball of a Keshet chlorofrigate for the classic silver saucers of the Smaragdi. And no one could ever see an aggressively colorful coral reef floating in space and not know that the Eska had come to town. I have to say, if I had a spaceship, it would be an aggressively colorful coral reef. That's what it would look like. Would purchase, would fly. Boop. The one vehicular commonality among all the millions of spacefaring species, past, present, future, and prefer not to state, is that it is easier, cheaper, and more fun to grow than to build. This is what Grogunar Gore Cannon discovered in the carbonated shadows of the fluoro-chloro forest of Elir as she tried to invent a way out of loneliness. And it led to both the impressive horror tonnage of the Yortmac meat ship and that marvelous second general unkillable fact. For everything that exists, somewhere in the universe, there is a creature that eats it, breathes it, fucks it, wears it, secretes, perspires, exhales, and excretes it. Somewhere on Yint, there was a mammal the size of a convention center, stuck taxonomically between a bear and a crocodile, the decomposition of whose fresh corpse produced the exact type of gases necessary, when combined with the electrostatic ion acid sap of Elir trees, to propel the entire disgusting mass of itself into orbit. Somewhere on Earth is an insect that excretes a golden antibacterial ooze that also does a splendid job of sweetening your tea. A terribly picturesque tree whose bark will fix your malaria right up. And a large, four-legged, two-horned mammal whose reproductive system dispenses ice cream, brie, and buttercream frosting. But somewhere on Bataclic was an invertebrate coral polyp who, when combined with the profit motive of the Ur-Gamma conglomerate research and development bog, could digest a sudden overdose of fat, iron, riboflavin, calcium, and whatever else was unlucky enough to be within roughly a 6-meter radius, and crap out a starship. And, like overbearing parents pressuring their introverted, artistically inclined children into becoming rich doctors who jump the karaoke queue, the ESCA managed, with a little positive reinforcement and an orgy of gene splicing, to railroad their local bioluminescent moon jellies into inhaling stellar radiation through their translucent bells and exhaling a healthful oxygen-nitrogen mix, their version of sea cucumbers into ejaculating explosive saltwater plasma at any nearby enemies, their brand of furry brine shrimp into eating space debris and vomiting defensive shields, their six-eyed mussels into filtering solar energy and converting it into usable propulsion, schools of something very like over-emotional clownfish into flushing bright green in the presence of foreign long-range radio waves, or working FTL drives, and, perhaps most impressively for the aquatic creature lacking anything like the proper glandular setup, their freshwater starfish into sweating gravity. For an Ur-Gamma conglomerate wearable instant short-range combat shuttle, the trip from Earth to the Moon took approximately the length of time necessary for the Roadrunner to explain all this to her cargo of aging rock stars, look puzzled at their response, and ask, "What do you mean nothing on your planet excretes starships?" The small ambassadorial vessel docked in lunar orbit loomed up outside a porthole punched in the fluorescent coral wall of what drew closer at planet, and by the time of the question mark, they could see nothing but the massive bulk of the ESCA frigate. If their shuttle was a nice reef in the Maldives, the real interstellar cruise ship was the Great Barrier Reef, touched by the drunken god of space, time, and saltwater aquariums. High above the dark side of the moon floated a hypo-colored goulash of coral only slightly smaller than Sardinia, studded with all of the above. The unfiltered light of Earth's familiar yellow sun sparkled on the electric blue and sizzling pink bells of jellyfish who had clearly cleaned their plates at every supper. They were absolutely massive, encasing the entire reef ship in a protective barrier of neon mesogleistic skin, their tentacles clustering beneath the craft like a sloppy Christmas bow, ready and eager to dock with any vessel secreting a friendly venom formulation. On the starboard flank of the ship, in pristine, enormous English letters, a swarm of phosphorescent sea worms spelled out the name of the great Esca interstellar ship. Cake in the rain. The Roadrunner trilled joyfully in the distinct tones of a movie trailer voiceover. Look, friends, it's not such a big, scary galaxy out for blood. We respect your primitive culture so deeply that we have named an entire reef ship in your honor. You see, even if the song of your people falls flat, we will carry on the best of you into the universe's promising future. Ort St. Ultraviolet took a breath to say something about the utter and complete nonsense of the entire London Aquarian, hanging out on the unfashionable end of the moon with the most rubbish lyric in history blinking on and off on its side like a broken pub sign on demand. Once again, that someone explained the last 20 minutes to him, but slowly this time and with short words. But before he could turn that breath into words, a gulping sound, halfway between a champagne bottle opening and an octopus sucker latching on, popped their ears painfully as the shuttle corked itself into the mothership's mollusk-encrusted cloaca, and the airlock began to equalize the pressure between the two ships. Oh, I can't do it. On the wall of the shuttle, the correlated remains of Ort's microwave display counted down helpfully in large blue numbers. On the other side of the jelly glass docking hatch, they could see, improbably, impossibly, a hyperactive red panda jumping up and down and waving his paws at them. That is Ooh, said the blue flamingo. He is our mandatory cachet and my extremely best friend. You will probably like him better than you like me. Everyone does. I accept that. The microwave numbers ticked down slowly. There was nothing to do but wait until the next insanity rushed in with the airflow. Decibel tapped his foot awkwardly. You look great, Ort. Still teachings? I have 2 kids, you ass, Ort replied. You couldn't ever really get mad at Des. He didn't mean anything by not being able to retain information that didn't concern himself, music, sex, movies, or, bizarrely, Ort had found one night on the tour bus in Dublin 19th century literature for more than an hour or two. Especially when he smiled sheepishly and dragged that million-watt focus back onto you. That sheepish smile killed him every time. Ort used to find it endearing and even enviable. Decibel Jones always lived in the moment. Omar Khashoggi always lived in an uncertain future. Mira, he supposed, had always lived in her own head and allowed others to visit once in a while, with advance notice and extensive decontamination protocols. Excuse me, babies, said the Roadrunner, in what both of them instantly recognized as the voice of their old manager, Lila Poole. But you gotta supper up before the show. How many times have I told you? I swear, you can lead a punk to stardom, but you can't make her eat. The Esca held up one of Ort's much-used white lacquered tea trays. the handles of which were now fully colonized by vermilion brain coral. On it lay 3 glass saucers. Excuse me. And on each one of those sat 2 servings of something that looked a lot like a very expensive mushroom. Something that looked like a squashed licorice, all sort, from the bottom of the bag, and something that looked like a cappuccino. If the barista had won several prizes for latte art, but had an unfortunate seizure while drawing a quadratic equation into your milk foam. This is some hardcore XXX keep it in the back room under a curtain Alice in Wonderland action, and what this is, Decibel said with total delight. Is it lunch? His hand was already halfway to one of the mushrooms. That was the power of Lila Poole's indefatigably upbeat boardroom mum North Country voice. If Lila said to do it, it was good for you. Good for the band, and probably good for humankind at large. And it had been so long. A feeling of oceanic calm he hadn't felt in years descended over Decibel Jones. Someone else was taking care of the details. Someone else was handling logistics. Thank Christ. I really think we need to have a serious discussion about food allergies before we start eating space all sorts, Ort fretted. But he too was under the spell of their old Lila-fueled agreeableness. Because peanuts are nothing compared to what I presume grows on some artisanal asteroid on the underside of the universe. Do you cats have MHRA? FDA? Anything? Don't whine, kittens. It's not lunch. Think of these as jabs for your Pan-Asian tour. There's your Hep A, there's your Hep B, and there's your typhoid vaccine. Not everybody you meet is as conveniently pneumopathic. Oxygen-breathing and gravitationally compatible as your girl Friday here. The mushroom's actually a dormant fungal agent that will infect your brainstem with a pretty laid-back strain of Yumpian encephalitis. Whoa, 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 shouted Des and Ort. They leapt back as though the tea tray were full of spiders and credit card bills. Decibel tried to recover quickly, telling himself that he really ought to have gotten over any squeamishness with regards to alien biological compounds back in Croydon, but it was instinctive, as deep as dirt. Take it easy, Jesus Christ, you gotta learn to trust a little. You'd think I'd threaten to wipe out your whole planet. My little joke. They're all completely safe, I promise. Look, my old job is to get you to Litost in one piece and ready to shine, so I wouldn't hurt you for love nor money nor socio-political advantage. Friends, Decibel, Urt, lend me your ears. Only speaking languages you've actually learned is a sign of a healthy mind. Where's the fun in that? Once your cute wee antibodies get a load of Yumpian encephalitis, they'll start working like the rent's due tonight. You know how your nose gets all snotty and your throat swells up when you have one of the flus? Well, turns out, as long as you're carbon-based and keep your brain on the inside, the body's natural immune response to this is to produce a kind of linguistic acid reflux that blows out the bits of your brain that insist on having to conjugate and decline and punctuate things before it can understand them like cheap subwoofers. Doesn't work on the Yumps, though. Poor sods. They're pretty resentful about it. You haven't seen anything until you've seen pot-bellied plesiosaurus trying to speed read through 16 local phrase books at once. Oh, you two are now officially allergic to penicillin. That shit clears the infection right up. Right. So, the all sorts is going to paste in some of the Ursula's junk DNA and mutate your lungs into being a bit less closed-minded when it comes to respiratory partners, and the coffee is just a caffeine jolt to your inner ear with a nice foamy agile gravity agent so you don't barf, drift off, or explode when we land. Thank the U's. It's mostly their toenails. We share up here, you know. Make it a homier galaxy for everyone. Plus, if you don't open source your assets, we quarantine your planet, and any further attempts to holiday outside your system will be met with big cannons. I mean, giant. Huge. Still, it's all right, isn't it? Couple of bites of a slurp and you're ready for anything. It's like Goggoner's fourth general unkillable fact says. Everyone's always saying love is the element that binds the universe together, but that's a load of bollocks. It's convenience. All things, from evolution to municipal sanitation to marriage to the Big Bang to diplomacy to the distribution of shops in urban centers, trend toward the most convenient outcome for the greatest number of lazy bastards. Because the inconvenient stuff ends up alone, without any friends, and a foot growing out of their head. And who has the time? This is disgusting, Ort Ultraviolet snorted. This is amazing, Des whispered. Much less invasive than Heathrow Customs, anyways. Ort's microwave chimed. Their docking procedures had finally finished defrosting. A cheerful blue popcorn kernel made of asterisks signaled the completion of the decompression cycle. You know I'd never hurt you. Miri's throaty voice came pouring out of that dark alien beak. Hey, said Ort quietly. You don't have to do that. Do what, baby? Talk like Mira, or Lila, or my dad, or Des's nan, or anyone. Do you not enjoy it? Does it not put you at ease? Nope. Just be normal. Just be yourself. Just be whatever passes for an ordinary sort of bloke where you come from. Like me. See? Decibel can swan about and well, if you'd ever met her, Mira could make eyes at you and turn you to jelly in an instant, but I'm just Omar. I like music and football and a laugh, and half the reason the band lasted as long as it did is that I'm so easy to go along with that those two only ever had each other to pick on. It's fine. We don't need to be at ease. This isn't an at ease kind of a gig, and honestly, it's really, really creepy. The bird's fishy eyes narrowed. You don't really like football. I can see it in your cerebral structure. But I want to like it, and that's just as good in the end. Just be the roadrunner. Be like me, and when he starts up being Des again, which he will, you and I can go smoke a ciggy together and make fun of his accent. Deal? Deal, Mr. Ultraviolet. The airlock released. A 7-foot-tall bluebird punched a gold-plated starfish, and Decibel Jones and the last of the absolute zeros stepped from obscurity into the biggest stage in the universe. Chapter 16. Hello everyone, my name is Carmel. I am your Glamour Hobo Bedtime tale teller, and tonight we are continuing on our journey of space opera by Catherynne M. Valente. It is my pleasure and my privilege to be here with you on Monday nights, but not for the month of June. I'm taking a bit of a break at 11 p.m. Eastern, where I read you some science fiction from my actual bed in my bedroom. We drink tea, we get comfortable, we climb into bed together. What could be better? As I've said before, and I will say again, this is the Nat21 Adventures Twitch channel. It's my pleasure to be here, and there is programming all week long, from Sunday all the way through Thursday. My shows are on Mondays, and then tomorrow is the main adventure of the week, where I am also the Metatron, your host, and your seraphim. Hello, Reverend Tommy. It's good to see you. So we've got one chapter left before we leave it for the evening. And I come up with some sort of little 100-mile story about the game last week. Something about a mermaid's tail, I'm sure. I wrote so many 100-mile stories this past week on my travels to Philly and New York City and Baltimore. I have so much material to turn into my podcast, which will be happening, season 3. But in the meantime, if you are nourishing the service, I highly recommend that you climb into bed with me and become a patron. I send you actual mail and gifts from the road. You get early access to things, and also, once a month, we have a midnight tea room just for us. Not here on Twitch, where we can hang out, drink some tea, talk about art, and just generally be in the same place. As much as this consensus reality allows us to be in the same place. So, darlings, if you're not into a long-term commitment, that's fine. But you can tip me on PayPal instead, if you're nourishing the service, as Ruby Rod says. But now, back to our reading. Chapter 16. I am a real boy. The 19th Metagalactic Grand Prix was held in Palul, the Smaragdi homeworld. It was the first time a species who did not fight in the war, on account of their having been minding their own business at the time, toddling about with endearing hesitance on their own moons, and not bothering anyone except the moon bears, attempted to sing their way into the upper echelons of galactic society. Contrary to popular opinion concerning the desirability of getting in early on Alpha Centauri real estate development, Palul is the nearest planet to Earth that wouldn't entirely murder any human being who set foot on it. At the very least, you'd have time to get a nice shark's heart sausage in one of the Blue Rutu's finer bistros before the low-gravity, high-pressure atmosphere and the global, rather well-rounded cynicism on the subject of strangers started rather dramatically forcing blood out of the ends of your hair. Some 40 light-years away in the constellation of Aquarius, Palule revolves around the ultra-cool blue dwarf star that humans have designated TRAPPIST-1. The Smaragdi, however, call their pale, minimalist sun Lagom, a word that means, in their exceedingly specific language, quote, a spouse who habitually withholds affection, but comes through with a squeeze when you really need them, and always pays the bills on time. Unquote. Palul itself means, quote, the parent who gives and gives, but is never enough for their ungrateful children, who will probably never amount to anything anyway. Unquote. Among the Smaragdi, self-deprecation has been refined into an art. You have not truly embraced the possibilities of intergalactic life until you have awkwardly nibbled vapor cheese and drunk platinum wine at a stand-up modesty show on Palula. It is a cold crystal place, covered in cold crystal oceans and warm crystal people. At least it was. Because Lagom is never much in the mood for the whole sensually nurturing solar warmth gig, Palul is a semi-hollow world. If you were to stand on the opal-crusted peak of Mount Eininen, far from the lights of the great Smaragdi cities, and look into the sky, you would see, just before your eyelashes started bleeding, what the ancient Smaragdi were doing while life on Earth was just sorting out whether 2 cells could ever really be better than 1. Even the Alunazar were astonished when they careened drunkenly into this little world of grotesque monsters, surrounded by engineering's answer to the Sistine Chapel. Unfortunately for them, the Smaragdi seemed to have been created in a lab for the express purpose of scaring the saltwater out of the Alunazar. A Smaragdin looks very much as though someone built the most unnecessarily elaborate set of 18th century Spanish plate armor out of bleached ivory and quartz, gave it a head of a blue-white hair like the 1970s shampoo commercial, stretched the whole thing out to 9 or 10 feet like particularly stern and judgmental taffy, and then thought it might be a bit intimidating, and painted a bit of pastel green and lavender on the joint blades for some more festive spring look. The overall effect would seem quite beautiful and haunting to a human, but to a short Technicolor invertebrate in Alunazar, they looked like the devil's own skeleton. I have to say, that description is delicious. At the Philadelphia Museum of Art that I visited last week, I went into their armory, which had quite a lot of overly complicated and very beautifully detailed Spanish and German sets of plate mail. Just saying. Palula is snugly encased in old Rutu's bindle, a cross-hatched topiary of translucent solar rods designed by the classical poet-engineer old Rutu to catch Lagum's emotionally unavailable light, beef it up a bit, and direct it usefully to the most inhabited parts of the surface. The glaciated surface of Palula was suddenly polka-dotted with pools of Rutu-blessed artificial alpine climate full of silver ferns, blue-gray orchards heavy with gin fruit, and liquid oceans in which the neon-blooded soufflet sharks swim free. The name of old Rutu is, among the Smaragdi, spoken with an awe equivalent to Jesus Christ and Nikola Tesla borrowing Buddha's tandem bicycle for a quick Sunday ride through Shakespeare's back garden. On activation day, every city on Palula scrambled to rename itself after him, which caused a great deal of confusion, upset feelings, cancelled family reunions, Rutu's absolutely forbidding anyone to do any such stupid thing, as it was no big deal, I was up there anyway, might as well spot a DIY. Well, I've still got it in my health, you know. If you have someone in there, I'll only rip you off, and besides, you'd all do the same for we. Anyways, this is a bit rubbish. I was in a rush. 2 regional wars, and a small but feisty economic crisis until it was decided that everyone was pretty. They all loved the old man equally, and there was quite enough Rutu to go around, and the map makers could just have to seek out anxiety medication. Hence, on Palula, you will find no London, Paris, Vlimou, or Alun, but only blue Rutu, white Rutu, little Rutu, new Rutu, Rutu by the sea, dirty Rutu, broke down Rutu, backwoods Rutu, and so on and so forth. Controversially, the 22nd Metagalactic Grand Prix was held in dirty Rutu. The Smaragdi answer to Prague, once the capital of a great empire, torn apart by war, religion, vanished industry, and tourists who know in their hearts that it's not wrong to get so phenomenally plastered that you punch a police horse, because everyone knows horses vote Tory, just so long as you do it while ignoring some of the most sublime architecture in the universe. The general idea was that whether or not the Yurtmak turned out to be sentient, it would be rather poor form to rub their alleged noses in the cosmopolitan delights of Blue Rutu and then send them home full of envy and the slow, wistful poisoning of a farm boy's dissatisfaction with his pigs after he has seen palaces. Even if they ended up having to roast the poor things afterwards, it just didn't seem very nice. No one expected much of anything out of the Yurtmac in the way of danceable pop hits. The Utarak had discovered their world by accident and immediately wished they hadn't. The first officer on a deep space fishing boat, hunting the vast, delicious, and deadly Zabok crabs that scuttled through the galaxy, suckling at hidden tide pools of dark matter, picked up the faint broadcast of what their xenotropologist surmised was a folk festival emanating from a little planet by the name of Yint. Had the Utarak then required all Zabak trawlers to carry accredited translators on board as they do now, the poor Utarak commander would have known right away that the folk festival in question was the Yurtmac Super Murder Derby 9000, and very likely turned right around and headed toward safer embraces of giant dark matter crabs in the lonely depths of the void. The Yurtmac were clownishly violent, disgusting to look at, in possession of a language that sounded like someone enthusiastically smashing pots and pans together in a hot tar pit, and hadn't even gotten around to inventing agriculture before somehow, bafflingly, managing spaceflight. They were exactly the sort of species the sentients war had raged across the known cosmos to prevent from getting too big for their interstellar trousers. But rules are rules. No blowing up the horrifying death goblins next door without a bit of a song and a dance first. The Xiv won that year. Being a group of intelligence compromised of hot pink algae genetically fused with non-computational spores, the Xiv never formed rock bands per se. They sent the same supergroup to the Grand Prix every year. Some 60% of their species, decanted into artful vases and simply called us. They sang by pheromone, a crescendo of infectious hormones that maddened the mating instincts of every species in the dirty Rutu flophouse and grill, a vast, glittering state-of-the-art performance arena seating around 100,000, until the slightest whisper sounded like a techno-erotic laser light show of the soul, at which point us spilled out of their vases in an undulating rosy wave, spun up into a towering spiral of velvet sparkling life, and sang an ancient Xiv ballad called "Love is Easy When You're a Hive Mind," coupled with a thumping, thrusting subwoofer slaughtering beat, dispersing on the downbeat, slamming back into their magenta spire on the upbeat, and bringing the house all the way down. Yatagan Yump, murder derby champion and celebrated torch singer, walked across the spotless frozen floor of the flop house, dressed in a traditional Yurtmac lung gown, her dripping, postulant face hidden beneath a black veil so long it wrapped twice around the stage. She held something in her arms. The lights turned red and heavy and dim. A slow drum pulsed. Yatagan tore open the veil with her claws and revealed her instrument, the skeleton of her mate, cleaned and polished and hollowed so that when she wrapped her arms around him and tenderly kissed his fangs, her breath filled up his bones and emerged from his rib cage as a savage and anguished melody called "Death is a wish your fists make." "It's not what you think," went the chorus. "Don't be afraid. To love is to slaughter is to love. But by the rocks below and the rocks above, you don't do either one unless the other guy's really into it." At the conclusion of the song, which went on to become a popular choice for wedding DJs, Yatagan sat herself set herself on fire and burned to death in front of everyone with a smile on her face, waving delightedly to her fans as the audience threw flowers onto her pyre and watched them sizzle up into the heavens. The judging was not quick. 100,000 dinners were ordered in from neighboring Rutas. In the early hours of the next morning, it was decided by a very slim margin that yet again Jump and all her people were undeniably alive, intelligent, and possessed of a complex inner life, especially since the Utorak had really phoned it in that year with an entirely forgettable, quote, "Shall I compare thee to a dark matter crab?" unquote. Yet, if not for Yatagan Yump's sacrifice, the galaxy's children would never have grown up under the not terribly gentle ministrations of Goginar's Gore Cannon's Unkillable Facts, the 20th of which, penned for the occasion of the 23rd Grand Prix on Yint, is: "No one is ever really satisfied with what they've got. Look at that skinny bastard old Rutu. He heated up his whole planet like a leftover takeaway, and he still wasn't really that happy, if you ask me. People are mostly happiest when they think they're just about to get the thing they want most. Before and after, they're all monsters." And that is where we will leave this for tonight. Space Opera by Catherynne Valente. You can kind of see it. Is it that way? There we go. Dear ones, it's time for a 100-mile story. How are you enjoying space opera so far? Please tell me. It is an Olympic task for me to read that book out loud. It is so difficult. Her syntax is blinding, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you, Johnny O Twitch. In case it works out that our paths don't cross again in July, thanks for being there for us in COVID times in such and in person and human way. In case they do, I look forward to seeing you then. That is so wonderfully sincere of you to say. It has been my pleasure. And I will be back. I will be, probably on Monday nights again. All right. "400 League Story." Kingdom of Urt. You wouldn't know it, but there is a very serious market for false mermaid tales in Magecroft. Disgustingly, they are marketed as real mermaid tales, peeled from majestic and sentient creatures like Selkie skins. But they aren't. They aren't real, because that's not actually how you can skin a fish. The mermaid tales of Magecroft are like the Fiji mermaid of Earth. Completely and utterly false. And yet, persistent in their charm and persistent in people wanting their very own. All right, dear ones, that is it for me this week. Thank you for being with me all of these 15 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, as we read and read. I know we haven't finished this book, but I'm going to recommend that you go out and you buy yourself your own snake goddamn copy. Get it from an independent bookstore. Don't get it from Amazon. Again, it is my pleasure and my privilege to be here with you. If you've been nourished in the service, please tip. It helps me pay the rent on my hat orphanage. And good night, everyone. Good night. See you in New Jersey.